Tuesday afternoon, welcome into the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. A little musical interlude there as we get ready for a live radio broadcast. How you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd hop in time to sing a little bit.
Sorry,
add some vocals.
You don't want me to sing, but
I think we all want you to sing. I think we're all a little bit curious. I think everybody that listens to talk radio or podcasts is always a little bit curious if the syrupy tones of the hosts they listen to on a daily basis can actually carry a tune.
I mean this then in the nicest possible way, but if that is where people's curiosities lie, I would like you to go get a hobby. Because you don't, at least for my...
I have enough hobbies, buddy, but I'm still very curious.
I feel like now you have hobby.
Pretty good hobby.
Yeah. Have you won the national title yet?
I have not, but I did leave my alma mater in the middle of the night after winning a conference title and barely missing the college football playoff for the first available SEC job, and I didn't tell any of those kids.
You bailed on your own school.
Yeah.
Could you get to a point where you can make Middle Tennessee State University a national champion? Like, is there ever going to be enough time? Even if you're the best game player, like from the literal standpoint of playing the game, thumbs working faster than anybody else's, knowing the right calls to make and the plays to run. Could you have Middle Tennessee State in a position from a gameplay standpoint with the computerized roster strength able to beat, Ohio State or Georgia?
I took Ole Miss to the last 2 minutes of the game at Ole Miss. And in the game, one thing I do like about this game is if you're on the road, it is a lot harder to win. Your receivers forget the routes they're running. Sometimes they'll just run the wrong play.
Have you played at Clemson yet and gotten a false start? Because remember, Clemson had an actual administrator.
I tried to convince everybody.
Like a month ago, Clemson had an actual administrator after the disrespect of EA Sports calling Death Valley like the 11th hardest place to play.
Just
look at all the false starts. Look at all the false starts. An actual administrator.
Got that bent out of shape. I'm telling you right now.
Let me say it again. An actual administrator.
That administrator better be playing on the game. Because, look, if you keep winning at home, that rating will go up.
Do you have administrators like that built into the game that like make sure that your PR is taken care of?
They should.
Anyway.
Maybe that's the next level. That's the next dynasty level.
Lots to get to on today's program. Our good friend Chris Lowe of ESPN will join us. Chris, of course, a Rock Hill guy, and now makes his home in Knoxville, Tennessee, but covers the entire Southeastern Conference and really the sport of college football for ESPN. And Chris was scheduled to join us on the final day of Media Days the other day, but work intruded, and he's so nice. And was so apologetic. And he's like, call me next week. We'll get it done. And so Chris is going to come on today. We'll recap Media Days, get his take on a few things going on beyond the Southeastern Conference. Big Ten Media Days. Tony Petitti today, the commissioner of the Big Ten, echoing Greg Sankey from last week. We are focused on our 18. But one of the things that he did say, Elijah, we've got to get this conference right. And at some point, to be serious here for a minute about this topic of expansion / realignment, which seems never ending now, I understand that. At what point, first off, what is right? Not relative to wrong, but relative to, I suppose, comfort level. I don't disagree with Greg Sankey about 16, but here's the thing. If you keep growing, then one of the biggest problems that we all had with expansion in the last round is that we don't see each other often enough. And again, we talked about the scheduling format that had East and West, where you had to play everybody in your division, really hampering the Southeastern Conference. I can't speak for the Big Ten, but hampering the Southeastern Conference's ability to visit. We talked about how, A&M had not ever played at Sanford Stadium, or how it took 11 years for Alabama to travel back to the Swamp. That's not good. And now we're basically going to be in a boat kind of like that again. It won't be quite as bad. You won't have 11-year gaps between trips to venues. But if you keep growing and you remain at 8 games, which is going to be a topic we have later today, Are you really doing it right by your fans and your players in order to see one another? That's still very problematic for me. And, the Big Ten is at 18, but they have a 9th conference game. And we're going to talk about this later, again, in the context of what the NFL is doing. If you haven't heard, and Elijah and I will get into this in just a little bit, the NFL and the union are meeting with what have been described as, active talks over an 18th regular season game. We knew this was going to happen. It doesn't mean now it's not going to happen in 2024, but it could be put into place if they agree here soon enough. It could be put into place for 2025 rather easily. And they'll probably take away another preseason game, which is fine. Obviously, the players aren't going to play an 18th game without getting more money, so you're just going to look at a prorated share of what you're getting now. I would imagine that'd be the simplest way for the union to sign off. But even then, they might not. They may want that and then some, because you are asking them to continue to put their bodies in harm's way. And they know what they sign up for, but they're not robots.
Yeah.
So
they read contracts too.
Yeah.
They have people that represent them, that sign them too, which is another interesting case study as to what could happen in college sports. If there is ever any representation of players, we're going to have these very similar discussions a lot closer to home than just the NFL and professional sports.
Yeah, so we'll touch on those things. Again, Chris is coming up bottom of the hour. I want to start getting into a few things around the Gamecocks. Shane Beamer will speak again on Thursday at his annual golf outing. So we'll be covering that for you. Looking forward to hearing more of what Shane and some of his assistants have to say about this ball club. They'll report the following week. The guys officially, most of them are here, to be honest with you. A lot of them take summer school classes, obviously. But officially, the team reports as a collective next Thursday. And August camp, again, August, do not call it fall camp, begins on Friday, August the 2nd. Although our good friend Steve Fink will reference fall camp at some point on Thursday, I guess.
Well, that's because Oktoberfest comes out at that time. And really, to me, it doesn't start getting fall-ish until Samuel Adams Oktoberfest.
That's a tasty beer.
That's how I know football season's back.
I've turned in, as you know, into a very hoppy beer guy.
Same. My tastes have developed that over the course of the last decade.
And really, the hoppier and bitier and pinier, the better for me.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam Adams Oktoberfest has that nice, sweet, roasted malt flavor that's a nice departure.
It's the best malty beer I've ever had.
I don't disagree with you, man, at least from a large beer maker standpoint.
And I think the nostalgia of just knowing every time it comes out, it's time, baby. Yeah. It's time to put toe to pigskin.
Yeah. Oh,
Nothing
yeah, my buddies
like
and I.
Toe to pigskin, quite like in October.
That was a tailgate treat back in the 90s, when you got we'd maybe even get the case of the bottles and cool those down, and you knew that was going to be a good day.
Now you're talking.
As long as your team won, which sometimes they didn't in the 90s for my team.
Unfortunately.
Sometimes they did.
Sometimes those days were
and then
a lot better.
Then in the late 90s, the wins became fewer for a bit.
Dwindled.
And then 2000 happened, and it was all good again.
It was fun for a while.
Yes. So there's.
Did any of your favorite random Gamecock quarterbacks exist on those late 90s teams?
Well, I don't know if he's random or not, but, A1, Anthony Wright, could, from a purely quarterback talent standpoint, maybe be the best quarterback that ever played at South Carolina. Unfortunately, his teams were not good. And it really does bum me out, man.
He's the only one that's really played NFL snaps, right?
In any meaningful way, yes. Yes. Because Dan Reeves became a running back for the Cowboys when he left South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan just played in a different era of football to begin with, But yeah. There aren't Gamecock quarterbacks in the NFL. It's kind of like Ohio State, only the difference is that at least the Ohio State dudes do a lot of winning while they're in college.
They have some national championships and stuff.
But yeah, A1 and A1 played
Hey, he started a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, I
with the
think
Baltimore Ravens.
I think he was in the league, what, 10 years?
Long time.
A good 10 years, right?
I had a few Anthony Wright football cards growing up. I was always in those packs, man.
And I'm telling you, yeah, I know I've said this a bunch, but a few years ago at one of the spring alumni games, I was doing sideline here for the station, but I was down there early and talking to some friends and watching those guys warm up. Man, A1. Like I've told the story of when I was in high school watching Gary Carter just throw baseballs from behind home plate to second, right on the fence line down in St. Pete at spring training, and just marveling. I hate the Mets, but watching Gary Carter, I mean, I was like, like, wow. Watching A1 as a retired NFLer on the field at Williams-Brice on a Saturday afternoon in April, just whipping footballs as he was warming up. And I was like,
like what again?
Not everybody can throw a football like that. And he was just warming up, dude. But then he was starting to like have some guys and like get a little zip on it. And I was like, look at that. It's just fun to watch. That's why we like sports. Like, you want to see people that are better than you do stuff.
Do really cool stuff like that. Do something
and sometimes just throwing it. It's like, it'd probably be like, it's like when NBA fans go to shoot around just to watch Steph. I used to rag on Pearson. I'd be like, Pearson would be the guy that would get like, what's NBA TV, right? Is that what it's called?
NBA TV.
Just NBA TV? Like, there'd be like NBA TV 2, and it'd be nothing but shoot around. And Pearson would watch that. Like, if they really, I know they don't really have it.
Uh-huh.
But, I mean, just to watch a dude like Steph or somebody, just shoot.
I love watching, like, his warm-up videos. Yeah, anytime they're on Twitter, man, I'll stop and watch all 35 seconds of him
I watch those on YouTube.
3 after 3, and sometimes I'll be like, man, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
I really wish I could just pick up a basketball from 35 feet like it's a layup and drop it in a bucket.
Speaking of, I wish I could do that. Now that you say that, you got to go find the Louis Grizzard bit about couple of buddies at Sanford Stadium. I'll leave it at that until you find the bit.
I'll have to find the bit. I need to make a list, though, of like players that I just want to watch warm up. I don't want to have to watch you play, but I would pay money just to watch you warm up. Steph Curry's near the top of that list.
Yeah. Oh, I would think so. All right, lots to get to. We'll come back on the other side. I want to start getting into, I have a question, and I would love for you guys to provide your own input on this. What position battles do you believe are the most intriguing for Gamecock football in the upcoming season? I've got an answer. I'm going to run down a few things as to why I believe this. But in terms of the depth chart, which one do you think is going to have the most going on in August camp? All right. I think we know who the quarterback is. I think we know who the starting linebackers are and some things like that. But where I call it position battles, and I suppose that's the right way to label it. But in lining up a depth chart, which one has the most intrigue to you? However you might want to label those kind of things. Hit us up on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100 or chime in on the phones as well. Same phone number. He's Elijah. I'm Jay. It's Tuesday. It's the Postgame Show. Getting ready to get a new set of wheels for you, for one of the kids. Make sure you stop by Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union first and see what they can do for you when it comes to financing that brand new vehicle. Palmetto Citizens offers the same low rates on all new to 2021 models, and they've got some fantastic options for older vehicles as well, and all can come with no payments for up to 90 days to let you get ready for all that. Plus, they can finance over 100% of the retail or purchase price on those new 2021 models, and they offer additional coverage and insurance options that dealerships simply can't beat. So before you make that deal, All right, with anybody else, big bank, the car dealer, whatever, check out palmettocitizens.org and see what they can do for you. My wife and I are members. We've been using them for a few years now. Great people. Palmetto Citizens. Achieve your potential. Welcome back in. Postgame Show rolling on this Tuesday afternoon. Our buddy Chris Lowe of ESPN coming up in just a few, so we'll make this a shorter segment so we have as much time with Chris as possible. And before we do anything else, I want to remind you that the ultimate season ticket giveaway returns Monday. It's your chance to win season tickets to all Carolina home football, baseball, men's and women's basketball games. It's brought to you by the Men's Clinic. Keep listening for more details on how you could be that winner. That's pretty cool. I always say that. That's not bad, man. You know?
Good deal.
Yeah, that is. That
give you something to do.
That's a very good deal. Free tickets to all of them.
Can't say no to that.
Yeah, and you be the.
And good time for it to happen. I mean, Clemson game's not here this year, so that's unfortunate in football, but you still have some fun games to go to. Any game at Williams-Brice is fun. Basketball teams are doing really well. Women's, obviously, buzzsaw. Baseball games. Could be a whole lot
new
more
era
fun.
of
new
baseball.
Era. Like, this is a good time to get lucky.
So, I asked earlier, going into the break, what position do you look at and say that's where the depth chart battles are going to be strongest? Or maybe to turn it another way, Elijah, that's where the most unknowns are in terms of who's going to emerge to be a starter, to be that number 2 guy. And I'll just jump right in and tell you, for me, it's wide receiver. There's just not a lot coming back. There's some names that are familiar, but there's just not a lot of returning production. Nick Harbor had 12 catches. Tyshawn Russell had 5. Luke Doty, had, well, I don't have a number of catches on here. I didn't write that down. But then, by the way, I've seen this like 10
Luke
times.
Doty caught 13 balls.
Thank you. Elijah Caldwell, I swear I have looked like 10 times at Elijah Caldwell's name, and Elijah Campbell comes into my head.
Hey,
but I know it's not you.
During one of my hits last week with Bill on the morning show, he did call me Elijah Caldwell on accident. So we frequently get mistaken for each other.
And C.J. Adams redshirted last year. So Caldwell and Adams redshirted. So you got 3 dudes that caught passes as Gamecocks. Now, you've done well in the transfer market.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Jared Brown, 108 catches for Coastal. Amari Huggins-Bruce, 80 catches at Louisville. Gage Larvadane, 42 catches at Miami, Ohio. Delvin Campbell, 76 catches for nearly 1,200 yards, by the way.
Yeah, he's a deep threat.
At Nevada. And they like to throw out there. Vandrevius Jacobs only had 3 catches at FSU, but he's been in that offense, and he wants to make a name for himself. And I think a lot of people are very high on Mazeo Bennett coming in, and DeBron Gatling as well. Mazeo Bennett, 4-star, got hurt last year in high school, so he's working his way back into full strength. But I don't know, man. I think Nick Harbor has the most attention and focus put upon him because of who he is and his recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean he's the best on the team? He might be the fastest on the team.
He probably has the highest ceiling, to use a overused sports talk, I guess, analogy. But it's true. That guy with that type of speed and his build, yeah. I mean, if you can get him to maximize his potential, it's otherworldly good. You just haven't seen him really scratch the surface of being a big-time Power 4 college football wide receiver.
Huggins, Bruce, Larvadane, and Campbell will all have just the 1 year in Columbia. Jared Brown has a couple left. Jacobs will come in as a redshirt freshman, so he's got plenty of time. And again, we know what Harbor's about and some of the others. So I don't know. And Mike Furry's got a lot of work to do to figure this out. We know he's developed some guys. We know what he's about in terms of his coaching style. We know he brings a head coaching mentality into this job as well, so that's a plus. But what, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to give you my stock. Ask me again around Halloween. We can do a little bit before. Look, so there's going to be a depth chart, and Shane is not allergic to depth charts the way the previous coach was. Again, the previous coach put out one depth chart, literally, depth chart the week 1, and like a dude, could have 2 broken legs in November, but if he was the starter in game 1, he's still on the depth chart. I'm like, come on, man.
He doesn't like to partake in those. You can have somebody else do it, like that's the thing. You can have somebody else do it.
But and I'm not looking for agreement or anything else. What do you see? How when you look at some of these, and we'll talk about every position. Obviously, we got plenty of time to discuss these things. But as we are about a week away from camp, and we're going to hear from Shane again on Thursday, to me, look, first keep your quarterback upright as best you possibly can. Even if you do have a more mobile quarterback, that's not fair. I don't want to say a more mobile quarterback. A guy who can take off and run vertically. Spencer was clearly pretty good.
He could escape pressure.
Yeah, he could keep the play alive, but he was still looking to make the pass play, whereas Lenoris may tuck and run. and they'll be coaching accordingly, right? So I don't want to. Mobile is not fair. Dual threat. Spencer was not a guy who was going to take off. Spencer ran. I think Bill Gunner said to me this morning like a 4.95 or something like that. Like it's not going to be something that is. It's probably not that slow, but anyway,
not quite timing his 40 with a sundial.
Yeah,
but
that'd be me. But where else are we looking and trying to find look, I don't know who running back one is going to be. I think we have an idea, right?
I have a good guess.
Yeah, I do too. But I don't see that nearly as much of a battle. Again, you got some good numbers on here, but so few of these dudes have played for Carolina and or in the SEC.
I think the biggest question of the running back room is more how do you divvy out the carries and the role, right? I mean, I think if you're going to have a workhorse here, it does kind of feel like it's going to be Rocket Sanders because he's been that in the SEC, but Oscar Attaway is fantastic out of the backfield in terms of catching passes and really beating teams in the short game like that, and that's kind of where he made his mark at North Texas, too. Oscar Attaway was a perfect complementary back. He was never the leading rusher on any of his North Texas teams, but North Texas ran for a lot of yards, and he was a really good number 2 back. And I think he could slide into that really well. But how also do you mix in Juju McDowell, who has a very diverse skill set, catching the ball out of the backfield, being used as a slot receiver, being able to almost kind of be a gadget guy in a really weird way, and also having Jawarn Howell, who ran all over the place in the last half of his first year at South Carolina State, and it looks like he's really starting to scratch the surface of what his athletic capabilities are. I think the biggest thing is because you do have so much talent there, there's something to watch for with the running backs this year. It's really how they're used and how the football is divvied up between all of that talent that you have in that backfield room. I have no worries that any of them will emerge as really good football players. I just don't know how they're going to be used as really good football players. And that's another one of we can name 6, 7, 8, 9 reasons, 10, as to why Dow Loggins has one of the hardest jobs of anyone on this team right now is because they've completely assembled an offensive structure that's significantly different than what he had to work with in year one. So it's not like you're completely installing a new offense, but you're having to really redefine what you want this offense's identity to be based off just a whole new skill set.
Hit us up with your thoughts, 803-404-6100 on the Firehouse Subs text line. Timeout here. Come back on the other side with our buddy Chris Lowe, ESPN national college football writer, primarily covering the SEC. What did we learn in Dallas? What does he think of the Gamecocks? And more. Chris Lowe coming up. Talking college football on this Tuesday. Shocker. Welcome back in. He's Elijah. I'm Jay. Lots to get to today. Coming up next hour, or get into a few NFL thoughts, too, as they may be talking about they are talking about 18 games. Might college football follow suit with some reformatting of the schedules? We'll get into all those things coming up. But right now, as promised, our buddy Chris Lowe, a longtime college football reporter for ESPN and a South Carolinian from the wonderful city, Football City, USA, Rock Hill, South Carolina. Now makes his home in Tennessee, but always appreciate his time. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Good to be back home after I'm sure what was a eventful Friday for you guys, trying to get back with all the airline snafus.
We were in the airport in Charlotte for 8-ish hours. So I've probably had worse, but I can't think of it right off the bat, Mr. Lowe. But I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
I got lucky. I was able to get on another flight out of Dallas, but it was a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, we finally got home and even did a show on Friday. So there's that. What did we learn last week? I know this event has kind of gone from maybe more of a making news event to, now more of a convention and a gathering to kind of discuss ideas. But did anything come from your perspective, at least how you do your job, from last week in Dallas?
Well, I'll say this, and I know Nick Saban said that Texas wasn't going to run the SEC, and I agree with him. But, coming away from that week, Texas is clearly a thing in the SEC. I mean, they're going to be they're going to bring I'm not saying they're going to win championship after championship or play after championship, but having them in the SEC, and certainly along with OU too, is going to make a big difference. And I think you bring that big brand, a brand that I think probably is in as good a shape as it's been for a while now, with the way Sark has recruited and brought in players in a conference that's already loaded. I think that's probably the thing that stuck out to me. And in year one, a lot of people think Texas has the pieces in place to win it. Certainly to be a playoff team. I think it'd be a huge disappointment in Austin if the Longhorns are not in the playoff next year.
Yeah, definitely, especially now that we've expanded to 12 and they just made it last season. But, Chris, what was one team that you might not have had on your radar or thought as much of going into Dallas and Media Days and now leaving Dallas and Media Days after talking to people, players, coaches, other media members that you've kind of been talked into a little bit?
Well, a lot of people don't believe in Missouri or Ole Miss, that they got to prove it to they got to go out and do it before they're ready to anoint them. I think Missouri, with the way that Drinkwitz has brought in players, he's gotten key transfers to come in. They've got that throw catch combination in Brady Cook and Luther Burden that scares everybody. And I think on defense they've been able to reload pretty well. I mean, they're a team that with their schedule, and I always, everybody starts looking at who's got what coming back, who added this. When I look at races and I look at predictions and teams I think that might be able to take a step, and listen, this is a team that won 11 games last year. So it's not like they were, chopped liver last year, but their schedule sets up pretty nicely when you look at the 2024 schedules and who got what and who has to play where, et cetera. They don't have a tough non-conference schedule. And I think with everything else that I just sort of outlined, I think they got a chance to be a playoff team, and certainly a team come 1st of November that's right there in the conversation.
Chris, you couldn't see me, but when you said a lot of people are struggling to believe in Missouri and Mississippi, I just wanted you to know that I raised my hand because I'm one of those guys. I get it, and all the points that you just made about Mizzou, I know about Ole Miss, but I want to take you to Oklahoma because a lot of people, well, I don't know if Oklahoma's ready for the SEC. I'm like, it's Oklahoma. What am I doing wrong, Mr. Lowe, when it comes to measuring where OU is today relative to what OU seemingly is almost every year, which is a team that wins 10 games minimum?
Yeah, we forget they beat Texas last year.
Right.
Well, a lot of people seem to forget that. They beat them head-to-head. And I do think Oklahoma in Brent Venables' third year will be much more equipped. He's got more guys who've been in the program for 3 years, guys like Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, two outstanding defensive players who will be leaders for them. Much like Tennessee, much like LSU, South Carolina would be in this boat. They've got a quarterback that they really like, a quarterback that's talented, in Jackson Arnold, who's going to be in his first year as a full-time starter. That's always, a little bit of an unknown there. But no, I'm certainly not discounting the Sooners. They've been a really good team for a long time. They've been a playoff team several times under Lincoln Riley. As I said, they beat Texas head-to-head last year. But you know what? Schedules, our old buddy Steve Spurrier used to always say, he'd quote one of his older coaches, I think it was Pepper Rogers, and say, a coach is only as good as his players and his schedule.
Yeah.
And, Oklahoma's schedule is a lot harder than Texas, than Missouri, than Ole Miss. Hey, Texas plays two teams within the league this year that are in top 25 preseason polls, 2 of their 8 in conference. Oklahoma, by contrast, plays 6 of 8 within the league that are ranked in most people's preseason polls. Now, preseason polls are what they are.
Right.
Schedules look different in late October than they do right now, but their schedule and their pathway is a lot more difficult. I really think their game against Tennessee, which will be the Sooners' first SEC game on September 21st, is a tone setter. I think when you look at league games in September, that may be as pivotal as any, because I don't see the loser of that game really having much of a chance to be in the playoff. The winner, by contrast, I think has a chance to be there playing for the right to go to the playoffs in late October, early November.
Talking to Chris Lowe of ESPN, national college football analyst, fresh off his trip with us to SEC Media Days. Let's bring our attention here to Columbia and Shane and the Gamecocks. Picked 13th. Shane kind of predicted that. Flying under the radar, Chris. That seems to be the theme right now for Carolina. What was your take on the perception of this Gamecock program last week as you relate it to what comes now in the regular season?
Yeah, I think you just hit it, flying under the radar. You didn't hear much talk about the Gamecocks, really across all formats, as I did radio and TV, and just not a lot of people talking about it. And I think when you have a losing season, when you lose a player like a Spencer Rattler, who was really good, I don't think Spencer got near the credit he deserved last year by the way he played for South Carolina. There are going to be a lot of questions. A lot of people sort of discount them. I thought they would be about where they were, 12, 13. And you know what? I think that's good for Shane. I think it's good for the team that people have sort of written them off. I think they'll play better. I think they'll be a lot more motivated, a lot more focused to go in and prove people wrong, much like they did his first 2 years. He wins 7 games his first year. They play 4 quarterbacks. One of those is a GA coach. The other guy's a Division II player. Their second year, they get better. They beat Tennessee. They beat Clemson in the season. And I think last year was a bit of a bummer. It was a downer for everybody, Shane included. So here's a chance to sort of get back and be that team that goes to the postseason. I never want to sort of single out 1 or 2 games that I think will make or break a season. But you look at those first 4 games for the Gamecocks, they got to figure out a way to be 3-1 in those first 4 games. And one of those games is at Kentucky, the second one. Then they come back home and play LSU at home. 2 of those are non-conference games they certainly should win. So being 3-1 to me is an absolute must for South Carolina as they go through the rest of the schedule. They didn't get an easy draw either. I don't think they've got the hardest schedule, but they certainly didn't get an easier one. And, how Lenore Sellers plays and how he develops from that first game on. And Shane told me that he feels much better about his depth and being able to roll in guys there in the defensive line right there in the interior than he did last year. But so, stopping the run is going to be critical. And I think, do they get a healthy Rocket Sanders? If they do, and they can open some holes for him, he's another one that people have forgotten about because he was hurt. But 2 years ago, catching the football, earning tough yards, being able to break plays and those chunk yardage run plays, he was as good as anybody in the league. So if they get a healthy version of him, that makes a big difference for the Gamecocks.
The Gamecocks are kind of in the same boat as a couple of other teams that I find to be really fascinating, that there's probably a lot of variance in how their seasons can end, and that's with also Tennessee, Kentucky, and Oklahoma, because they all have talented quarterbacks, some incredibly highly touted coming out of high school, but we have little to no real sample size as to how good they actually are. But with those 4 teams between South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Oklahoma, which unproven quarterback would you trust in most to be able to have his team outperform preseason expectation?
I don't know, because that's a good question. I think probably just from a pure arm talent standpoint, Iamaleava at Tennessee is probably the most talented. But, we other than the Iowa game, the bowl game last year, we haven't seen him play. Jackson Arnold played in the bowl game last year, made some mistakes for Oklahoma, but put up big numbers. I know, again, in talking to Shane and people around that program, they're really excited about what Sellers could do. I talked to a couple of the kids in Dallas, a couple of the players, and, his ability to run the football and extend plays and his arm strength. I think, was the other one LSU, Nussmeier? Is that who you mentioned?
Oh, did not. We can throw LSU in there, too.
Yeah, Kentucky, I think you said,
Kentucky. Kentucky has a transfer, Vandegrift from Georgia, another guy who's going to be a first-year starter. So, listen, it's a quarterback's game now more than ever. And you've got to have that guy that, especially at a school that doesn't have the kind of personnel that can line up and just knock you off football, Georgia, Alabama, Texas. You got to be able to find ways to move the ball, hit some explosive plays downfield, do some different types of things. And I think that's going to be critical for all those guys that we just mentioned. And how do they play around them? You look at Tennessee. Tennessee has lost some really good receivers the last few years. They feel like they have good depth at receiver, but I don't know that you point to any one guy on their roster and say he's Jalen Hyatt, or he's a breakout. He's one of the kids LSU had last year. So much of it is we talk about quarterbacks and the quarterback game, but how do you protect them? Can you take some pressure off that quarterback's shoulders by running the football some, especially in the red zone? And I think the third thing is, you've got to, you got to play well around them. Guys have got to make plays and catch a ball, out in space, break a tackle, turn a 7-8 yard gain into a 25-yard gain. And I think, Carolina's certainly got to be able to do more of that. I've known Shane Beamer a long time, 2 decades or more. And I never doubted that he was ready for the job. When he got it, a lot of people said, well, he's never been a coordinator, he's not done this, not done that. I think what he did his first 2 years was underrated, and the coaching job he did. Now, last year was what it was. I think this year it will be very telling if they can get back to being a winning football team, a team that's in the postseason, with the way he's been able to. I know they have it. You're not going to just out-recruit Georgia, okay? You're not going to do that. You're not going to out-recruit Alabama and LSU. But bring in guys who are really good football players and develop them. And I think they got a couple guys up front on defense, Sanders and Hemingway. Those guys could play for a lot of schools. You got to be able to get more of those and bring in guys that maybe weren't as highly rated and get them to that point. And I like Shane's staff. He hasn't been afraid to make changes the last couple of years, and certainly he's done that this year. But this is a big year for him, and he knows that. There's no question he doesn't walk into this season with his eyes closed, but I think he also feels good about the culture, the bond on this football team, and some of the young guys like a Sellers who haven't had really chances to play, but they know what they've seen behind closed doors and what they feel like they can do this season.
Good stuff as always, man. Great to see you last week. We'll check in with you during the year. Appreciate you.
Okay, guys. Take care.
You bet. Chris Lowe, ESPN. CeeLo, ESPN to follow on Twitter. This is the Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Postgame Show rolling on this Tuesday. Coming up next hour, we'll get into a scheduling discussion. We'll start with some news around the NFL, but Elijah and I in our pre-show meeting today, this is sometimes what happens, and then I just tell Elijah, all right, we got to stop because save it for air, right? Like let's have this discussion, but we'll blend the what the NFL is likely to start doing with what we would maybe, and I won't speak for Elijah or for any of you, but what we might like to see in college football in the coming years. I know right now they're going to, look at the playoff and see how, I don't know if 1 year of a playoff committee making selections based on the current formats is enough of a sample size. Do you do it twice before you start? I don't know. And I know anyway, we'll get into all those things. I could keep going now, but I don't want to start it. So we'll get into it next hour. Before we recap Chris Lowe, real quick, Elijah, pull up today's, it's not a poll question.
We did a thread of the day.
Yeah. But you mentioned this to me a little bit earlier, but just remind people what you're looking for here on the Twitters.
Yes. So in lieu of a poll question, I did thread of the day. Who is your favorite random Gamecock QB? Because if there's any program in the country that has a slew of good random quarterbacks, this has to be one of the best, the most ideal ones.
Did you have in your head a thought as to what you meant or felt with the word random?
Yes. The first name that popped up was Savell Newton.
Okay.
And Blake Mitchell.
Okay. Mostly
because they were the Gamecock quarterbacks in my childhood.
Right.
So that popped up in my head pretty well.
Man, if Savell doesn't get hurt, that's one of those things. If Savell doesn't get hurt, I wonder.
Pops hit us and said Dondrell Pinkins, and I was like, oh, man, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Dondrell's one of those rare quarterbacks that didn't like to use the laces.
Yeah. I've seen pictures.
Yeah.
I didn't watch a ton of it.
I remember being down on the sideline one day watching him in pregame and then asking, I was like, does he? And they're like, no, he doesn't like the laces. He doesn't like the way they feel. And I was like, why don't you just get him a ball without laces? But apparently you can't do that.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
Regulations in the sport. That's fascinating, though. That's just didn't like throwing on the laces. I love that.
I feel like, he could throw it, but I just feel like that would it slip or, is the ball tail off? Do you have to learn what the spin looks like if you're a receiver? I
would love to know, the reason behind that.
Well, I don't know, but it worked for him, right? At least to some degree. Yeah, okay. I don't know, man. This is harder for me than because so when you say random, somebody that started, right? But maybe not all or not much. Maybe a guy that wasn't.
Maybe they made a cameo. Like we have some Zeb Nolans on here, which are fine.
But favorite, I don't know, does Dylan Thompson count as random? He only started 1 year, but man, it was a hell of a year.
Someone did specifically say backup Dylan Thompson. That was a comment.
2012 Dylan, man, the Clemson game again. He would have been a Gamecock legend with that one play
alone,
much less the win, and then to have the season he did. All right, hour 2 coming up. All right, don't be alarmed, but that stuff that's been falling from the sky the last couple of days in Columbia is called rain. It's a natural occurrence that allows for, plants to grow and other things, and rivers and lakes to fill back up. And it also means your grass might grow in your yard, and that means you need to get to Cato's Power Equipment. I love my Toro Time Master. It has made yard work even more fun, and yes, I'm a guy that likes to do yard work, at least, on a routine basis, maybe not the super heavy stuff. But I got fitted for this by Ben and Matt and the crew at Cato's, and I was very excited about that. Whether you cut your own backyard, whether you do it for a living, get in there for excellent sales, service, and advice. You might love your mower. Time to get the blade sharpened or replaced. Get in there and do that. If you do it for a living, make sure that all your equipment is top-notch so that you don't miss out on any jobs and any pay. 4012 West Beltline Boulevard, always online, catospowerequipment.com. 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. It's the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Thanks again to our buddy Chris Lowe of ESPN for joining us in the last half hour talking Gamecock football, SEC football. You know, he echoed some of the things I've been saying that, you know, Mississippi and Missouri, really good. Texas, he's right. When Texas was in the building last week, you know, Sark came in with a police escort, and that was definitely the heaviest media contingent, you know, for the one day. Like a lot of times at media days, especially when they've been in Atlanta or Birmingham, you'll get groups of media that come in just to follow whatever school or whatever market they're from. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, we've been there every day for many, many years because we cover the whole event and want to talk about the whole league. But that's fine that certain TV stations and things like that, you know, beat writers might come in. And that was no exception when UT was in the house last, Wednesday, Elijah? Yeah, Wednesday.
Yeah, next to last day.
Yeah. Not as heavy for the A&M coverage, but that doesn't surprise me either.
I walked by Mike Elko and had to double take to make sure that was Mike Elko.
Well, what did I tell you? You know,
he might be the most anonymous man in the building.
Right. You and I were kind of joking. You know, Sark comes in with a police escort and like a 4-truck convoy. And Mike Elko could have pulled up in his own vehicle, whatever he drives.
You could have driven to Tacoma.
Yeah, just
pulled up
in the front. How you doing, sir?
Didn't have any A&M stuff on. Someone would have asked him what room he's staying in.
Right. Yeah. You parking today? A valet, sir? Nah, I'm here for like an hour and a half. Just got to do a little thing upstairs.
I'm one of the football coaches. No, you're not.
Right.
No, you're not.
But, you know, it will. To Chris's point about Texas, they are very accustomed to running whatever conference they've been in for generations. The old Southwest Conference, the Big 8, or the Big 12, excuse me. And now I don't think they will, they won't immediately come in. And I know there's a lot of SEC fans, especially old guard SEC fans. And Elijah, you grew up in Tennessee. I think there's a lot of Tennessee fans and a lot of Auburn fans and a lot of fans of the two Mississippi schools who, rightly or wrongly, believe that Alabama runs the Southeastern Conference. There's a lot of ACC fans that believe North Carolina runs the Atlantic Coast Conference. And I get where people come from, but there's no questioning really from people I've spoken with that Texas, made sure that the conference knew we're Texas and you're not. And remember, Texas and Oklahoma weren't conference partners until the merger, until the Big 8 became the Big 12 when the Southwest Conference blew up. So it'll be interesting to see how Texas takes to life initially without being in charge. And they'll tell you, of course, oh, we were never in charge. We were always good conference partners. And to some degree, there's truth in that. But the Longhorn Network thing was the final straw for a lot of people. And Texas didn't care. Look, you got to look out for your own. I get that. But when you're in a conference, you got to look out for the other guy, too, to some degree.
It's a team effort.
Yes. So will Texas be a good conference partner? Look at Florida State right now. Are they being a good conference partner? No.
They're not getting what they want.
No. They're being a horrible conference partner, actually. I actually wanted to get into that with Chris. We just ran out of time, but I told Chris, I was like,
partner in anything.
If we have time, I want to ask you about Florida State being a petulant child. Texas has never done anything like that. So, but again, when Texas wanted to make more money, they just said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll start a TV channel. And so they did. And it was successful. And they're keeping it, if you haven't heard, the Longhorn Network is going to remain, but it's morphing into basically like my words here, like a video jukebox. You can go back and watch old Texas stuff. They won't have any live events anymore, sports-wise anyways. That's all controlled now by the conference. But the Longhorn Network will be like a free streaming service to go back, sort of like, I guess, like
Tubi, but for Texas football.
Yeah, kind of
athletics.
Kind of a YouTube meets something. Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, the Gamecocks are going to be, Gamecocks have Gamecocks Plus now. And I know that because I did a show today on Gamecocks Plus with Bill Gunner.
So you can't confirm that it's a thing.
Confirm. The second, I guess today was officially the start of our second season of the Cocktail Hour.
Very nice.
So, happy about that. Please watch Gamecocks Plus.
Happy birthday.
If you're a Gamecock Club member, you get that access. Just download the app and check us out and all kinds of cool stuff. Man, all the behind-the-scenes stuff is fun. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what Texas does the first time they feel they aren't getting their way, or will this, amount of money that they're going to get just keep them relatively quiet? I can't possibly imagine that they don't every once in a while flex a little bit, right? Because that's what they're used to doing.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
They have a lot of money. They like to let you know they have a lot of money.
But A&M has been a really good partner with a lot of money.
Certainly.
I don't see A&M. I mean, people can pick on A&M for some of the things that they do. And a couple of them are, I think, I don't know if this is a term or not, but I'm going to make it one, pick-onable.
Pick-onable. There's got to be a better way to say that.
You're ripe for ridicule, but pick-onable sounds more fun. So that's what I came up with. This is live radio.
Mockable.
Mockable, okay.
Yeah. Pick-onable.
I like mine better. I want to take credit for it.
The Yale leaders are a little more pick-onable than maybe some other figureheads of other universities.
Yes.
I could see that. Yeah.
Maybe a lot more. Not just a little more. Yeah, maybe a lot more.
A whole lot more.
Yeah, maybe a lot more. I really can't even think of what a number 2 is in this conference.
I think
if the Cowbells are the number 2, then man, that you are talking.
It's a distant.
That's coast to coast.
Well, it's an ocean. It's the whole ocean itself,
right.
Top to bottom. I don't think the people who ever, like the powers that be that decided to make that a tradition, ever had the foresight of something like Twitter happening. You will get made fun of.
Yeah. Heck, even before Twitter, probably. I don't know.
The internet.
Yeah.
You did not ever think the
yes,
internet.
that would be the way to go. The internet.
Your weirdness being broadcasted across all 50 states.
What is number 2 in the conference? Cowbells, Georgia people that just, random adults that just start barking.
The Vandy Whistler.
Yeah, that's one guy alone.
Specific.
Yeah,
it's baseball specific.
That guy, man. But again, if the next 2 are those 2 groups of Bulldog fans, State and Georgia, yeah, you're right.
The gap here is pretty brutal.
Yeah. Because really, I mean, Georgia's been a part of my football life since well before Carolina joined the league. So, barking fans, I'm accustomed to that. And honestly, the Cowbells don't bother me.
No, yeah, me neither.
You just get used to it, man.
But
It becomes that white noise, right?
Yeah, and have you ever been to a high school football game? You're going to hear cowbells.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to a high school football game in the Southeast United States, you're going to hear cowbells. And at some point, it's easy just to block out. But you know what? I appreciate in the Southeast United States that some college football teams, or a college football team, still commits to the bit of having a fever, and the only prescription
is
being more cowbell.
Sure.
I can appreciate that.
Where my kids went, where I went a long time ago, they hand out cowbells before big playoff games.
Love it.
Yeah, I got a few. Next time you're at the house, ask me. I'll show you. I keep one in our game room right on the table because it's been a lucky one. It's been to many games now and seen many state championships.
Perfect. That's how it should be.
And it's loud. And when you put a few hundred of them together, louder.
You create a nice little home field environment there.
That's right.
So
whatever it takes, man.
I kind of dig the cowbell.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the cowbell. And again, I don't. The only problem I have with like Georgia people barking is, I can remember all them barking, after a really miserable day in 2003, especially. Well, I don't want to revisit a day like that.
I don't mind getting barked at by a dog. I mind getting barked at by a drunk grown ass man.
Yes,
I do.
Yes.
It's weird.
It's
weird.
It's
uncomfortable.
And that day, y'all might remember, Lou was here.
Don't make animal noises at me of any kind, please.
I think I'm right in saying it was the 03 team. 03. And there was like a pick six that day. My wife and I were sitting like 3 rows from the top. We didn't get great seats that afternoon. This was before I was doing the network. And there was a dude about 2 rows in front of us that was chain smoking all day. And it was also like 100 degrees.
God.
And we took a bus, so we couldn't leave. And I didn't really want to leave because, like, the game was going poorly. I just wanted to get away from that. And we just felt like trapped. And so then we're going back to said bus because you had to wait for the whole. It was not a good day. I don't remember the score, but it was not a good day.
I'll look it up.
And then, yeah,
Curious.
they were Gamecock fans because, I mean, we're dressed like it. And some dude just, like, got right up in my grill, man.
And started barking at you?
I was like, all right, like, and I'd been there before.
Down, boy.
Yeah, I'd been there before, so, but I'd never had that. You know?
never had the actually getting barked at by another grown human being.
But anyway, so, yeah.
Look, I understand, the college football fandom in its own way is like kind of a mental disorder a little bit because you're letting 18 to 22-year-olds affect your mood for an entire day or week at a time.
That's very fair. Yeah.
But
we're
I'm
all
cool with
afflicted.
that.
Yeah,
I have accepted that.
Yeah,
and
we're all
I've
afflicted.
chose this life, and I'm very cool with it. But like that is another level that I just don't think anybody should be willing to mentally break to get to for their school.
Yeah.
Or their team if you didn't go to the university.
Yeah, I mean, if you went, it's cool. Anyway.
Just don't bark at me. Don't make animal noises at me in general. Please.
Yeah, I mean, no Alabama fans do like an elephant trumpet.
That's hard to do. That's just, in their defense, that's really hard to do. And if you can pull that noise off and you can start making it at people, I might be able to make an exception to the rule if there's at least a degree of difficulty added to it.
Would you rather have a fan base that barks a lot or proves how much they know how to spell the name of their school?
Depends on how hard it is to spell the name of the school.
That's fair.
Because if it's just Texas, then, like, come on. You're not impressing anyone.
Yeah. Not just spelling after a while. I'm like, oh, good. You know how to spell the name of your team. That's good. 803-404-6100. I love these random thoughts we have. This is like Jack Handy on the old Saturday Night Live. We'll come back on the other side. Might the NFL be adding a game? And we'll incorporate what we might like to have from college football. Want your thoughts on it as well. You're listening to the Postgame Show. You know, we're over halfway through 2024, but Roy and Dana Finley are still offering customers no payments, no interest until 2025 if you purchase a new system from AAA Heating and Air. And you'll get 12 months of no payments or no interest. So you purchase it in 2024, you don't make a payment for 12 months into 2025. And if you're worried about how you can finance these things, don't. Guaranteed financing is there for you, okay? Plus a $1,500 system buyback rebate. So there's an easy, way to get going right there. And the 15-year parts and labor guarantee. If you're ready for an instant quote, log on to the website, call AAAtoday.com. That's call AAAtoday.com. Or you can call them up, speak with one of their great representatives, 803-677-1500. Use that same phone number for a quick repair as well. Whatever you might need, you'll stay nice and comfortable with AAA Heating and Air. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. Get into this NFL story. Again, we'll incorporate it into college football. But a quick, Elijah just went to the box score, a quick semi-correction on my experience at Sanford Stadium 21 years ago.
Yeah, I got curious. So I wanted to see, because you're like, I don't remember the score. I'm like, well, I can find out the score for you. This is easily accessible information.
I knew it was a lot to a little.
So I'm like, how miserable could Jay have been? Well, the score is 31-7. I'm like, ooh, yeah, pretty bad. Oh, and then I saw it was 17-0 at halftime. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'd be over it after sniffing someone's Marlboro Reds for
the whole time,
the entire first half. And if it's hot and miserable,
it's like, dude, take a break.
I can totally understand. Like, okay, yeah, I'd be ready to go too. So I can already picture and empathize with the experience you were going through. But I was like, hey, they scored late in the game with less than a minute left. You at least got a 37-yard touchdown pass in garbage time. So you got to see your favorite team score. Now you just got to let the clock run out and walk peacefully back to the bus and try to avoid any barking dog humans. And the ensuing kickoff, Georgia ran back for a touchdown, so you couldn't even enjoy that.
Yeah, so it wasn't. I said there was a pick six, but it was a kick return. I couldn't,
a folly of errors.
Yeah. So
occurred.
I knew there was some type of return.
September 13th, 2003. Not the best day.
No, and again, day game,
life.
and it was. Some of you listening were probably there. Again, it was so. It's hot. I mean, it's this time of year, or that time of year in this part of the country. It's hot.
It's not going to feel great, but it's going to feel even worse.
That was not. That's really. Oh man, I might be able to call. Well, I might call that my worst ever road game experience. I would tell you that 1995 in Knoxville was worse because Carolina got beat even worse. But the reason that day in Knoxville is not the worst is because that night in Old Town at some place, I think it was called like Smoky Mountain Brewery. Does that sound right?
That sounds right, yeah.
The Atlanta Braves
won the World
beat
Series.
the Cleveland Indians to win the World Series.
There you go. Okay.
So there was that.
That dampens it
a
little bit.
Basically,
You'll remember that day fondly, even if they did.
Yeah, well, what I remember, that was my first trip to Neyland, and what I remember is, man, I think I've said this before. I'm sure I have, whether it's on air or not. Like, man, this place is not nearly as cool as my two buddies from Knoxville have made it out to be. I was like, it's kind of a dump. I get the nostalgia and the mystique, and that Manning fellow was pretty good.
He's pretty good, yeah.
But no, the blow of that day for the Gamecock football team was absolutely softened by the Atlanta Braves beating the Cleveland Indians 1-0 and winning the World Series. Tom Glavine, a one-hitter through 8. Mark Wohlers closed it down. David Justice with a home run that cleared the wall by that much. Javi Lopez with a pickoff. Good beer at this joint. Big place. Some dude wanted one of the bartenders to put on like the Auburn game, and there was almost a fight. It's like, go watch the Auburn game somewhere else, dude. The Braves are about to win the bleeping World Series. The Auburn game.
Hey, can you put the Auburn game on?
I don't even know.
What would have been really funny is if they were playing like Southeast Missouri State.
I don't know who they were. I don't know who they were playing. I don't care. I don't know. Guy was like, yeah, buddy, I really can't do that for you. Sorry.
So it's kind of a big deal right here.
Sorry.
So. If there's anything that unites all SEC fandom, it's the Atlanta Braves.
Well, the Braves are the South's team. There's no doubt about that. The South, however, does not have a football team that people unite around, right?
There's a bunch of different ones that everybody hates equally.
The NFLPA, that's the union, and the league have had discussions at what the wire services here call a very high level over adding an 18th regular season game. This is according to Lloyd Howell, who is the executive director of the NFLPA. He says they have not reached the stage of formal negotiation, but does say that he is going to discuss it with his membership in the very near future. Quote, we have talked at a very, very, very high level superficially with a recognition about this is something that we should be talking about. And we should really kick the tires and understand what else goes into that decision-making process. Where does the 18th game come from? I think the foregone conclusion is, well, you just grab it like in what would otherwise be preseason games in August. You play it forward. But these are details that really need to be fleshed out. Again, there are other economic, health, and safety matters that also need to be clear to our members before there's ever an agreement about an 18th game. End quote, again, from Lloyd Howell, the current executive director of the NFL Players Union. Yeah, you and I mentioned that in a cursory way that, you just take that third game in the preseason and you turn that into the 18th game, if you will, of the regular season. But I get what he's saying, reading between the lines there, Elijah. It's not that easy. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that just one more game check, a prorated larger, if I'm making X now, I'm going to make X plus one game. I don't think that's going to be enough to satisfy the union. And they do have to have full approval. This has to be collectively bargained. So the league cannot snap its fingers and go, hey, employees, you're going to be doing more work. Some companies can do that. Just look at them and go, hey, I pay you this, and now I'm going to have you do more work. That's not how it works with the NFLPA. So, what if it's a game and a half check? And I'm just throwing things out. I have no idea what the official negotiations will look like. What more will they want? Will they want another, third of a percentage point of revenue in addition to another game check? I mean, there's a whole host of things. But, better health care, longer health care.
It's going to have to get better because this is...
Yeah. And the health care, from what I understand and talking with several dudes around the NFL, they now it's really good. Now the health care is better. Now the pension fund is better. Things like that relative to the old days. Might they go to bat for some of the guys from the old days and say, we want an increase in their pension pay, and have it retroactive. There's a whole host of things. But here's what I think is the real truth of this in the not too distant future. This will happen because, for one thing, 17 is imbalanced. And we've talked about that with 9 conference games, and we'll get into some things with football, with college football. But you don't want to play 1 year 8 at home and 9 on the road. And then they're turning some of these into sort of de facto whatever games for the purposes of Europe and ultimately maybe Mexico City. I think one day they'll probably try to play a game in Japan or something. They're already playing a bunch in London, a couple in Germany. Yeah, again, I think they wanted to play one in Mexico City and just maybe the stadium wasn't.
Yeah, the field was a mess.
The Azteca wasn't quite ready for it.
It turned into that Rams-Chiefs legendary Monday night game that was like 54-51.
Yeah.
That was great.
This is going to happen. It's just a matter of what it looks like. But do we want? Is this what we want?
It's not what we want. I know a lot of people clamor for more football, but at the same time, I'm kind of anti muddying the waters of your own or watering down your own sport. I think that would absolutely do it because we already see exactly the type of load management in the last week or two for NFL teams. It's only going to get worse. What did we just have happen in the NFL this past season that was worse than any other year? Quarterback injuries. How many teams did Josh Dobbs play for last year? I mean, too many. That guy might play for all 32 NFL teams in the next 3 years because people are going to get hurt and are just going to need a quarterback that's sitting on the couch. Gardner Minshew will end up being the same way. But as much as I love Gardner Minshew and Josh Dobbs and a lot of those journeyman quarterbacks that we all grow very fond of, the Gus Frerots of the world that we all grow fond of because they're fun names to bring up on a day where you're just remembering dudes. It's not great to have them playing really important football every year because the most important position of the field gets injured. And we had an all-time high number of quarterbacks get out for the year before week 12. I don't think that's going to get any better when you're adding an additional game that counts and that matters.
At some point, and I think it's years away, and I don't know what's going to supplant it. As much as, soccer may be growing in this country while baseball declines, I think the NBA has seen a bit of a resurgence of late, which is nice, but it just pales in comparison to the NFL and college football. And I suppose I could answer my own question by saying that what might supplant it, nothing's going to take over the NFL, but can college football with what it's trying to do, and that's why we're going to come in with just kind of follow this up here, again, y'all have seen, we talked about it when they threw out the top 100 television programs of 2023. And, 93 of them were football. And of those 93, it was like, 80, I don't know what it was. It was like 86 of them or something
For NFL.
were NFL games. Like the Macy's Parade and, some political, like the State of the Union. And, but like there were no baseball or basketball games.
There was one that was a Gordon Ramsay cooking show, but only because it came on right after
Followed
the Super Bowl.
Right.
So really, that's football related.
Yeah, followed the Super Bowl. But I think this is going to happen. No official discussions as of yet. I know the commissioner mentioned this earlier this year on the Pat McAfee show. But Howell did say, quote, our membership is interested in a myriad of things before we even get to the number of games: health, safety, field surface, OTA makeup, compensation, what % of annual compensation is guaranteed. There are many things before we get to the 18th game. It's a negotiable point, so it grabs headlines. I totally get that. So, again, you line up some of these other things. Like the players are really hacked off about a lot of fields and how bad they are. Fix that.
Ask every single player that's been a visitor against the Jets and Giants and ask them what they think about MetLife's turf.
I mean, fix those things because they've got the money to do whatever they want to do or need to do to make their product even better.
Yep.
It's a matter of coming off of it instead of having, as Mr. Burns might want, another ivory-handled back scratcher.
It sounds good, though.
Well, it's probably nice, but anyway. All right, how does this fit into what college football might be looking at? We'll discuss on the other side.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you, they're causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. We'll start with one on Kilbourne Road near Rosewood Drive. That's caused some mild traffic backup, as well as a couple others in Richland County on Hardscrabble Road at Clemson Road and on Columbiana Drive near Lake Murray Boulevard. In Lexington County, we have two to get to. One on I-20 westbound between South Carolina 6, exit 55, and Longs Pond Road, exit 51. And an object on the roadway has caused some traffic backup in West Columbia near I-77 northbound in 12th Street.
Just talking about the NFL and the Players Union laying the groundwork, perhaps, to discuss expanding the NFL regular season games to 18 from the current 17. It had been 16 for a long time. A lot of other things to get through first. But Elijah and I, again, in planning today's show, we were talking about this story, and just one thing led to another, as it often does when you have a sports discussion, and we decided to end the discussion prematurely so we could save it for air. But I do want to at least kind of back things up to what he and I were talking about. One of the things we were saying is that at Big Ten Media Day, look, the Big Ten, as most of you know, plays 9 conference games, as does the Big 12. Now, the Big 12 went to it when they could basically have a round-robin format when they had 10 for a few years. Now they're up to 16. The Big Ten decided that they wanted to do it so everybody could see everybody, which I think is a fantastic idea. The ACC and the SEC have stayed at 8. The Southeastern Conference, and this is kind of where this ball got rolling, so I'll have Elijah pull up the some of these schedules again. But the SEC plays 8 with the, mandate that you play another Power 5 team. And you do have to play another Power 5 team. So I asked Elijah, all right, who has the easiest non-con, not overall non-con schedule, but who has the easiest Power 5 non-con opponent? And did we agree that it's Missouri?
Yeah, that one feels pretty easy. I think almost anybody that would listen.
They have Boston College.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm not trying to knock Boston College.
Can be sneaky good this year.
Yeah. I mean,
this year might be an exception. Because they do have a fun quarterback. Fun to play with on the game.
And I think we figured out that 2 SEC schools have Wake Forest.
1.
Just the one?
Yes, that would be Ole
Okay,
Miss.
so Vandy doesn't, just Ole Miss.
Vandy did have Wake Forest the previous 2 years.
Yeah.
They did a home and home with them. But this year, Vanderbilt has mixed it up a little bit. They have Virginia Tech at home to start the season.
Now, and again, we obviously know this year Carolina just has Clemson, but very often Carolina will have North Carolina or NC State or somebody like that. Next year, Carolina plays Virginia Tech over in Atlanta plus Clemson. This year, Georgia always has Georgia Tech. Kentucky always has Louisville. And Florida always has Florida State. Now, this year, Florida's also going to play UCF and Miami.
Yeah, that's tough.
So, again, go Florida for that. Not go Florida. I don't care if they win or lose, but go Florida.
I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect the hell out of that.
Big props.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that's what I want, man.
That's great for college football. That is great. Florida's schedule is great for college football.
That's why I've said, look, I'm not here, by the way, when we blend these topics of NFL schedule expansion. Look, the NFL may also expand one day, to 36 teams or something. I don't know, but I'm not really here for that discussion right now. I don't want the college schedule to go past 12. And really, I don't think any collegiate leaders want it to either.
I don't think it ever will.
But what I want to do is see the structure within that 12 get better. That's what I want. So I look at Florida's schedule. By the way, if you would, please, what's Florida's other game?
Samford.
Okay. Who pushed them to the brink a couple of seasons ago.
I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, they gave up. So in 2021, they beat Samford in football. 70-52.
Florida scored on every possession and finally stopped Samford from scoring like in the fourth quarter.
This sounds like me and my friends playing this video.
Samford scored.
Can't stop anybody.
That's 8 possessions that Samford scored, 7 touchdowns and a field goal, and Florida just scored a touchdown every time. Nobody could stop anybody that game. I remember that game.
All gas, no brakes.
So, I want to see the conference format change. I want to see the SEC go to 9. But we got to talking about it. So, again, like Georgia's going to play Clemson and Georgia Tech. And I'd like to see Georgia Tech get better. Vandy, as you said, plays Virginia Tech. LSU this year plays both L.A. schools, including Southern Cal in a neutral site, and then UCLA comes to Baton Rouge. Texas is going to Michigan. Alabama is going to Wisconsin. A&M hosts Notre Dame. Tennessee's got, remind me?
NC State
in a neutral site game. Ole Miss, you said, has Wake. Who does State have?
Mississippi State has...
That's the one I can't.
At Arizona State.
At Arizona State.
Yeah, so they got to travel a bit.
And again, Kentucky's going to play Louisville because Mark Stoops would never schedule a second Power 5 game at all.
No. You can't go 8-4 if you schedule too many targets.
No, yeah. And again, as we said, Missouri. Did we forget anybody? Who's Arkansas got?
Arkansas. Oh, they have at Oklahoma State.
Yes, that's great. That's awesome. And those campuses, when you think about it, see, they should play more often.
That makes
They're right there.
sense.
Yeah. I mean, you don't realize.
We should also bring Bedlam back.
Well, okay.
We can easily do that now.
Yeah, and then when they tell me they can't, I hate that. By the way,
it's BS.
It is. Yeah, it is total BS. Well, we can't fit it into the schedule.
Yes, you can.
I'll show you how. Like, what did I remember when we talked about this last fall? I was like, here's how you do it. You pick up the phone. You call the other school. You say, hi, other school. Would you like to play football with us? Yes. Boom.
What date do you have available?
Scheduled. It's that easy. And yes, it is that easy. And if you got to get rid of Akron, then you know what you do?
You
gajillion dollar athletic budget, you write Akron a check, and Akron will be just fine and go, whew.
Thank God. Like, you look at Oklahoma's schedule this year. They start off with Temple, Houston, Tulane, and then they play Maine on November 2nd.
Maine.
You could even keep Tulane
if Maine
and Temple
actually
and Houston.
had Bears on their team, that would make the game more interesting.
It would. They would still be about 30-point underdogs.
Yeah, probably. But I don't know, man. I mean,
under Bears.
You got to go up, get some of those Bears up front.
Now, they're probably not technically trained. They don't know swim moves. I don't know if they even are trained well enough to go when the whistle
they don't need
starts.
swim. They just take that big old paw. It's like a swim move. They just take that big old paw.
Well, I mean, like there's gonna be a lot of offside penalties.
There'll be a lot of holding penalties for Oklahoma too. Like trying to hold a bear.
Yeah, that's true. Also, Bears can't snap a football, so there's gonna be a lot of delay of games. 30-point underdogs.
That's fair. But Houston satisfies the Power 5 requirement. Now, I'm not trying to dog Houston.
Barely.
Right?
By a year.
And I don't know. Is Houston going to be good? Look, Tulane's had some years, but their coach left for...
Willie Fritz for Houston.
For Houston, right. There you go. Thank you.
A little bit of a rebuilding year.
So, and look, Temple, at least Temple's a really big school in a really big city. That's what they got going for them. I don't know how many...
I like Temple of the Dog.
Football players are
Big
at
fan.
Temple. But anyway, so that's not a great one either.
No. Oklahoma has one of the easier ones.
Yeah.
Which, if you listen to Chris Lowe in the first hour, he did kind of go by and break down their schedule in terms of what they have in conference play. Buddy, that's rough. That's rough.
It is. And look,
that's a grind. They got one of the shorter sticks in terms of what was being drawn last December when these schedules were announced.
But so this is what I'm saying. This is why you need to go to a 9th or 10th conference game. Let's make like I said, Florida. Good for you, man. When Carolina play, I know some fans around here. Look, you'd rather win. Like this year, you probably like this schedule better than playing North Carolina last year. But I am of the mind, as someone who grew up around here, South Carolina needs to be beating North Carolina in football. You beat them in the bowl game, and you lost last year. And again, if you could have that one play back last year, well, how does that game? Again, you squandered the fake kick, But even if you're splitting with North Carolina, I'd rather you play them. or splitting with NC State. I'd rather you play them than whomever else. And I can go on with schools all across the conference. It's just more entertaining. I know you want to win, but I'd rather beat good teams, you know.
12-team playoff encourages you to do that a little bit because the margin for error is not slim enough to the point where losing your first game, a tough non-con on the road, can completely eliminate you from playing in this thing.
Well, and I want to come back with that on the other side here. I want to stay with this discussion, but, you know, what we think the committee is going to do when it measures your schedules. Because, again, even if we have a, you know, so-called Power 2 these days, one of them plays 9 games and the other one does not. How does that reflect? You're listening to the Postgame Show.
107.5 the game. I'm good. How are you? Yeah, it feels like a waste too. I think it's a wasted game and an opportunity. I think you need at least, you know, a group of 5 win too. If I'm selecting the college football playoff and you play an FCS game, I'm gonna punish you a little bit for it. Like I'm not gonna I'm
All right, welcome back in. Post-game show rolling on this Tuesday. Jay and Elijah with you. Coming up next hour, we'll have our headlines of the day, revisit a little bit of our conversation with our buddy Chris Lowe as well, plus the drive around the SEC. Do want to remind you the craft beer card is back, but it's almost gone because we only have a couple of them left. I say a couple. That's more figurative.
And no, I didn't drink all of them.
Can't drink the card, but you can go get some value for it.
Yes.
You get $30 per location to spend. That's 12 locations around town. Again, 12 times 30, $360 value.
Look at you.
It actually says it in the notes.
You didn't have to tell anybody that.
I just wanted to be honest with people. I'm an honest guy, man.
To a fault, it sounds like.
Yeah. It's only $79. Again, you could buy like 4 of them and still be, saving money. Think about that.
Good.
Go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals, and a craft beer card could be yours. It is that simple. So, this hour we've discussed football scheduling. Again, the NFL and the union are discussing, again, in a very preliminary way, going to 18 regular season games, maybe as soon as 2025, but certainly not for the coming football season. And that just got us into a conference discussion with college football. Again, I'm not advocating for an expansion of the regular season beyond the 12. Heck, if anything, I might say take it back to the old 11, but that ship has sailed. But what could you do to make the scheduling more attractive, especially as television wants more and better content? The Big Ten plays 9 conference games. And the SEC plays 8, again, with a mandate that you play a Power 5 team. But, again, you can get around that. Some schools, Southern Cal playing LSU, Georgia playing Clemson, A&M playing Notre Dame, Bama going to Wisconsin. These are great games.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, this is great. This is what I'm here for. Mm-hmm. And no, I don't mind the neutral site games, but I'd rather be home and homes.
Campus games.
Yeah, that's what college football is. But is the committee going to hold it against the SEC? Because you and I talked about this. Like, for instance, Penn State's going to play West Virginia. And I imagine there are other good games. Like, again, we just said Wisconsin's going to play Alabama.
Yep. In addition to their 9 conference games.
But then Ohio State is going to play like Akron, Central Michigan, and Marshall. Now, Marshall's a decent game, but Ohio State's not. If Ohio State were to lose any of those games, Ryan Day will not be even given access to his office.
Yeah, that key card is going to stop working real quick, buddy.
And then Sunday morning, there will be a loud thud on his doorstep at his home, and that will be his box of stuff. And that's it. That's it. So they're not, but I'd rather see Ohio State. Like, look, I remember the Oregon game a couple years ago in Columbus. Might have been the best regular season college football game of the year.
Remarkable football game.
But Ohio State otherwise has no incentive, right? So I'm glad Penn State's going to play West Virginia because West Virginia can beat Penn State. Mm-hmm. But the Big Ten's not going to add, they're not going to mandate to their teams because they'll say, well, we have a 9th conference game. I'm just anxious to see, that's maybe not the right word, but curious to see is better, what the committee does and if they accept sort of the stance that the SEC has taken. Like, hey, we're not adding another conference game, but we're making our teams play these good games. And then, LSU's playing a couple of them. Georgia's playing a couple of them. A couple of years, not that Carolina's in the playoff discussion right now. They don't play a second one this year, but Carolina last year bookended with ACC schools. Again, LSU's playing both LA teams. That's great.
That rules.
Florida playing UCF and Miami. In addition, of course, to FSU.
That's great because they're local.
Yeah,
right? It's
great.
In the borders of the state.
It's
great. That's something that needs to consistently be done.
I'm here for those kinds of things, and I'd like to see more. I want to see the SEC. Listen, again, I know I'm mostly alone here. Maybe I'm not with fans, but certainly from an administrator or coach standpoint. But I'd love to see. COVID year proved you could play 10. Do it.
You're not alone on that one, because I was about to say, if I had it my way, you have 10.
I mean,
And a lot of that is because I'm just a sucker for proving a true champion.
Right.
And like, I'm going to use the Big Ten as an example all year long, because you look at the schedules for Ohio State and Oregon. Ohio State has to play Iowa. They have to go at Oregon. They have to go at Penn State. They have to play Michigan, and an improved Nebraska team travels there. They play all of the top 4 or 5 teams in the conference. Out of all the 5 top teams in the conference, Iowa being one of them, Iowa only plays one of them. That's at Ohio State.
What's Iowa's best non-con?
The best non-con, that would be Iowa State.
Oh, all right, that's a good game.
Which they do every year.
Yeah, that's. But that nobody else of any merit.
Nope.
Hour 3 coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways, and we'll start here in Richland County. An accident on Blythewood Road between Boney Road and Wilson Boulevard is causing some issues, as well as ones on Columbiana Drive near Lake Murray Boulevard, Hardscrabble Road at Clemson Road, Highway 1 at Augusta Road at North Grampian Hills Road, one on I-20 westbound after the Monticello Road exit 68, one on Kilbourne Road near Rosewood Drive, one on Percival Road at Highway 12 at Spears Creek Church Road, and lastly, one on Trenham Road at Two Notch Road.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Also, the final hour of the postgame show, along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Let's jump right in. We were in Dallas for SEC Media Days last week. This week, the Big Ten is taking its turn with 3 days in Indianapolis. And like the SEC last week, the Big Ten started off with an address from Commissioner Tony Petitti, who did say today that his league is, quote, focused on the 18 right now. That meaning the number of schools in his conference. Quote, a lot of work had to be done to integrate USC, UCLA, and we started that work over immediately when we added Oregon and Washington. So I think we're really comfortable with where we are. We've got to get this conference right, and that is where our focus is. I look at this and say, that's exactly what you got to say. It's exactly what Greg Sankey said last week. It closes no door, throws away no key, but at the same time, you feel like you want to take these these conferences, the schools are the conferences, at their word. Elijah, I look at this right now and ask, perhaps somewhat rhetorically, how serious are these conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, about trying to make life work so everybody sees everybody? You and I just talked about a scheduling format. 9 games in the Big Ten will allow more of their membership to see one another on a more regular basis. How the SEC wants to try and do it while still preserving rivalries remains to be seen at this point as you go to 16. And if you add schools, it only makes that challenge more difficult unless you add the requisite number of games. So, yeah, I didn't – you and I were talking this morning. I didn't anticipate anything major coming out of this in the same way that I didn't really anticipate anything from the SEC last week. You and I got to sit with Commissioner Sankey, and we asked him about schedule format, and he said it's something that we really wanted to put out here, and we, with a few things that had gone on in the recent time, he just said we just didn't get into that, but they have had those discussions. But how serious are these two leagues about keeping the number they have and trying to make that work relative to battling one another while working together if it comes down to the availability potentially of Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia, and maybe North Carolina State and Virginia Tech? I don't know. I know you don't know either, but they say the right thing. But, if these schools become available tomorrow, they're going somewhere else, yeah?
Yeah, maybe. It's just hard to take anything they say with a grain of salt. And we need sample size too, right? I mean, we don't know exactly how well this is going to go on because we haven't done it yet. My hypothesis for me, Elijah Campbell speaking for Elijah Campbell, the Big Ten is going to have a disaster if Rutgers backdoors their way into your conference championship game. And it may sound like I'm kidding, but, buddy, I'm looking at it right now. I looked at it during the break. If we say Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Oregon, Penn State are the top 5 teams in the conference.
And then they are.
You want to know how many of those teams? And Rutgers has vastly improved. They won 7 games last year. They bring back 8
I like
on both
Shiano,
sides
man.
of the ball.
He can coach.
They have a running back who ran for over 1,000 yards. They bring back the entire offensive line and a really good offense. You want to know how many of those top 5 teams I mentioned they're playing this year?
I want to think that Rutgers is going to play at least one of them.
No, you'd be mistaken. They don't play any of them.
Wow.
They do not play any of them. They do have to go at Southern Cal and at Nebraska, but other than that, there are no projected top 5 teams in their own bleeping league that they have to play. I'm telling you, I say it slightly tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, if Rutgers plays the way they did at the back end of, at least at some points of last year, then they can beat UCLA. They can beat Southern Cal in Los Angeles. So Southern Cal's defense is still as bad at stopping the run as possible. They get Wisconsin at home. If Nebraska's Nebraska, who's lost more one-loss games than anybody in the country over the last couple of years, they can take care of business against them. Washington has like 3 returning players on their team. They play Washington at home. It's quite the flight from Washington to Piscataway, New Jersey. Dude, I'm telling you, Minnesota's not going to be very good this year. Maryland's not very good. Illinois is projected to the bottom, and at Michigan State, Michigan State's a team that most people projected to be last in this conference. There's a really good chance that maybe, on accident, Rutgers backdoors their way into threatening for a Big Ten title game.
Well, I hope the Terps do okay now that, I am now a 7-year Terp parent.
You have contributed to the university.
Yeah. Wow, that they don't play any of those teams. But see, there again, that's part of the problem.
And here's the thing with knowing sample size too. Tony Petitti can say a lot of things now about the schedule. Greg Sankey can say a lot of things now about their schedule. But until something like that happens inadvertently, and you have to have like Rutgers play Ohio State or Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, your championship game that not only decides your champion, but decides who gets the bye in the college football playoff. I'm telling you.
Saturday afternoon, it's Ohio State and Rutgers for the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
Lucas Oil Stadium. As the Buckeyes take on the Knights.
Scarlet Knights. Yeah. They have to dub
it's like
it
a
in
last minute. Because nobody knew who they didn't know they were. They had their voice guy in L.A. like do all the potential matchups.
And then never thought Rutgers. Never once. We even record Northwestern just for giggles.
Right.
Didn't record Rutgers. I'm telling you, this is like I'm not saying this is likely, but it is a possibility that something like this can happen because all the top 5 teams in this league have front loaded their schedules with the other top 5 teams in this league, and there's so many teams that are at the the next tier that don't have to play more than one of them. It's remarkable.
Sorry, I shouldn't make myself laugh, but I'm just that's what I'm like. That's what would happen to the Big Ten. Is that Fox would have their guy, like he really would.
Tony Petitti, because you know how they do like the press conference before the conference title game? I can imagine Petitti being like, yeah, we're really excited for Coach Day and Ohio State to be here, and Coach Schiano with the Rutgers. Yes. Yeah, Scarlet Knights. Yeah, from New Jersey?
That would be funny. The voice guy just has his whole script right there.
Has to dub over. Scarlet
30
Knights.
different potential matchups, and Ohio State and Rutgers was not one of them.
Nope.
Speaking of the Big Ten Championship, one more note from Big Ten Media Days. It was announced today that the championship game will remain in Indy in the Dome until at least 2028, but that alternative sites will be explored beyond that. And Tony Petitti, the commissioner, saying, quote, "It's really important that markets around the country get to experience Big Ten championships. It's a really good way to connect the conference. So over time, you'll start to see the geographic footprint expand." That's cool. Now, look, are they going to play it in L.A.? I don't know. Do you play it in, like, Chicago again when the Bears build their new stadium? But are they building a dome, by the way?
They're building a dome.
Are they building?
Yeah.
So you'll go there.
They're trying to host a Super Bowl down the road.
Yeah, you might play it in Minneapolis or something. That's a Big Ten city, Detroit. By the way, the game has always been in Indianapolis. The first Big Ten championship was 2011, and it's always been in Indianapolis. Remember, Birmingham actually hosted the first couple of SEC championship
Legion
games
Field.
at old Legion Field, man.
It is an eyesore.
Yeah, can't say RIP, but I would never play a game there again.
It ain't dead. It's just ugly.
Might we see, like, for instance, your former hometown, Nashville, Tennessee, is in the process of building a new stadium. They are going to build one. I'm not sure if the process has started yet, but
no, they're clearing the scrapyard that is currently existing.
Yeah, construction has not yet begun, but that'll likely be a dome. Might we see the SEC championship move around?
I hope not. No, it should never move around.
Hey, I like Atlanta.
Never, ever.
Atlanta's done a nice job for that.
Ever. It should always be in Atlanta.
Speaking of Atlanta, as we continue our integrated media headlines of the day, Braves fall to the Cincinnati Reds last night by a final score of 4-1. If you didn't hear it yesterday, during early warm-ups, as Whit Merrifield, the former Gamecock star who was just released by the Phillies, signed by the Braves, Whit injured a finger on his throwing hand, on his right hand, during infield drills and before batting practice. He did have x-rays. They are negative. His status is day to day. Nacho Alvarez was called up to replace Ozzie Albies overall. Ozzie on the IL for at least a couple of months. Nacho was hitless last night. And he said his first name, which is Ignacio, which Nacho is a nickname for the Spanish name Ignacio, said he only hears that name from his mom if she is mad at me. She calls him Ignacio.
But he knows he's in trouble if she calls him Nacho.
You don't want that.
See, usually it's the inverse, like I hear my first, middle, and last name with my mom whenever I know I'm in real trouble.
Yeah.
It gets scary. If I hear my mom referred to me by my middle name or includes it, we're in trouble, buddy.
Chris Sale goes for the Braves tonight, 13-3 with a 2.70. The Reds, at least as of last check, have not named a starter for tonight's game. Did the Reds still have pitching? You're a fan.
They might just throw Ellie De La Cruz for fun because the rest of the season's apparently down the toilet.
Ouch. I'm pulling for you. Actually, I'm not tonight.
Oh, I'm pulling for me tonight.
Yeah, I can't.
Because it would be really funny.
Yeah, not pulling
for me to make fun of some of the Braves fans that I met at SEC Media Day. I was sitting talking with a few with Barrett Salee and one of our friends from the Zone, who's a producer there, and they're complaining about the Braves. And this before the Albies injury, or now it's starting to get it's starting.
It's a rough year, man.
But they're complaining. I'm like, you guys are. Let me check. 11 games over 500, and if I'm just listening to the conversation without any context, you'd think you would be last place in the NL East. Yeah,
Braves fans have gotten accustomed to winning.
We're only 11 games above 500. We're only second in our division.
Not
we
fun.
might only make the playoff as a wild card.
Not fun. WNBA All-Star Game drew a record number of viewers on Saturday. The last mark was set when Dawn was still playing. She and Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, Lisa Leslie, Sue Bird. Man, that's some
firepower.
That's some ball right there. 3.44 million people watched the WNBA All-Star Game. It was the Team WNBA against Team USA in that game. The previous record was that game when Dawn was still playing, 1.44 million. So 2 million more people. And that was a lot of people back then.
It is, yeah.
So there you go.
Some growth.
So there's that. Jacksonville Jaguars today made former Georgia corner Tyson Campbell, from what I have gathered here, the highest paid corner never to make a Pro Bowl. He has signed an extension, a 4-year deal, $76.5 million, $53.4 guaranteed. There are further incentives that could add an additional $19 million to this deal.
A lot of money.
Man, you better get a lot of pick sixes, I guess. He will be the sixth highest paid corner in the league. There you go. And again, one more quick note. As we mentioned, the NFL and NFLPA are discussing at what the executive director of the union Lloyd Howell says is a very, very, very high level superficially. So no official negotiation yet. But maybe by the time the season begins, we learned that in 2025, the NFL will go to 18 games. Stay tuned for that one. That's our Integrated Media headlines of the day, brought to you by Integrated Media. And I'll tell you more about them in just a second. And then when we come back, we'll hear from Chris Lowe, ESPN, revisit Media Days and what he thinks of the Gamecocks in 2024. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Football season is nearly here as we talk about integrated media, and Michael Geddes reminds you, he's one of the owners, he and Nathan and the crew. Call them now. If you and your family have said, all right, this is the season. This is the time for us to get that home theater. We want to watch football bigger and better than ever. We want a surround sound system that makes it almost feel like I just got hit by some, high-flying linebacker. Do it now. Get ahead of the football rush. They're always busy, but they get even busier this time of year. But with one call, they can install the latest in 4K technology from Sony, from Samsung. You couple that with the Dolby surround system inside like you're part of the action. Maybe you say, no, I want outdoors. I want to sit on the patio or around the pool or on the deck and watch football. Can I do that? Yes. Integrated Media installs outdoor home theaters built around the Samsung Terrace TV, enhanced with Sonos outdoor speakers that look and sound like anything inside, and they will get you all the action all the time. 803-948-8327, Integrated Media. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Drive around the SEC still to come as well. But let's jump in. Elijah and I happy to be joined earlier this afternoon by our buddy Chris Lowe, longtime national college football analyst for ESPN and a dude who grew up right up the road in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And we asked him, amongst many other things, we started him off, what did he, from his vantage point as a guy with his experience, learn last week at SEC Media Days?
I'll say this, and I know Nick Saban said that Texas wasn't going to run the SEC, and I agree with him. But, coming away from that week, Texas is clearly a thing in the SEC. I mean, they're going to be they're going to bring I'm not saying they're going to win championship after championship or play after championship, but having them in the SEC, and certainly along with OU too, is going to make a big difference. And I think you bring that big brand, a brand that I think probably is in as good a shape as it's been for a while now, with the way Sark has recruited and brought in players in a conference that's already loaded. I think that's probably the thing that stuck out to me. And in year one, a lot of people think Texas has the pieces in place to win it. Certainly to be a playoff team. I think it'd be a huge disappointment in Austin if the Longhorns are not in the playoff next year.
Yeah, definitely, especially now that we've expanded to 12 and they've just made it last season. But, Chris, what was one team that you might not have had on your radar or thought as much of going into Dallas and Media Days, and now leaving Dallas and Media Days after talking to people, players, coaches, other media members, that you've kind of been talked into a little bit?
Well, a lot of people don't believe in Missouri or Ole Miss, that they got to prove it to they got to go out and do it before they're ready to anoint them. I think Missouri, with the way that Drinkwitz has brought in players, he's gotten key transfers to come in. They've got that throw catch combination of Brady Cook and Luther Burden that scares everybody. And I think on defense, they've been able to reload pretty well. I mean, they're a team that, with their schedule, and I always, everybody starts looking at who's got what coming back, who added this. When I look at races and I look at predictions and teams I think that might be able to take a step, and listen, this is a team that won 11 games last year. So it's not like they were, chopped liver last year, but their schedule sets up pretty nicely when you look at the 2024 schedules and who got what and who has to play where, et cetera. They don't have a tough non-conference schedule. And I think with everything else that I just sort of outlined, I think they got a chance to be a playoff team, and certainly a team come 1st of November that's right there in the conversation.
Chris, you couldn't see me, but when you said a lot of people are struggling to believe in Missouri and Mississippi, I just wanted you to know that I raised my hand because I'm one of those guys. I get it, and all the points that you just made about Mizzou, I know about Ole Miss, but I want to take you to Oklahoma because a lot of people, well, I don't know if Oklahoma's ready for the SEC. I'm like, it's Oklahoma. What am I doing wrong, Mr. Lowe, when it comes to measuring where OU is today relative to what OU seemingly is almost every year, which is a team that wins 10 games minimum?
Yeah, we forget they beat Texas last year.
Right.
A lot of people seem to forget that. They beat them head-to-head. And I do think Oklahoma in Brent Venables' third year will be much more equipped. He's got more guys who've been in the program for 3 years, guys like Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, two outstanding defensive players who will be leaders for them. Much like Tennessee, much like LSU, South Carolina would be in this boat. They've got a quarterback that they really like, a quarterback that's talented, in Jackson Arnold, who's going to be in his first year as a full-time starter. That's always, a little bit of an unknown there. But no, I'm certainly not discounting the Sooners. They've been a really good team for a long time. They've been a playoff team several times under Lincoln Riley. As I said, they beat Texas head-to-head last year. But you know what? Schedules, our old buddy Steve Spurrier used to always say, he'd always quote one of his older coaches, I think it was Pepper Rogers, and say, a coach is only as good as his players and his schedule.
Yeah.
And, Oklahoma's schedule is a lot harder than Texas, than Missouri, than Ole Miss. Hey, Texas plays two teams within the league this year that are in top 25 preseason polls, 2 of their 8 in conference. Oklahoma, by contrast, plays 6 of 8 within the league that are ranked in most people's preseason polls. Now, preseason polls are what they are.
Right.
Schedules look different in late October than they do right now, but their schedule and their pathway is a lot more difficult. I really think their game against Tennessee, which will be the Sooners' first SEC game on September 21st, is a tone setter. I think when you look at league games in September, that may be as pivotal as any, because I don't see the loser of that game really having much of a chance to be in the playoff. The winner, by contrast, I think has a chance to be there playing for the right to go to the playoffs in late October, early November.
Talking to Chris Lowe of ESPN, National College Football Analyst, fresh off his trip with us to SEC Media Days. Let's bring our attention here to Columbia and Shane and the Gamecocks. Picked 13th. Shane kind of predicted that. Flying under the radar, Chris. That seems to be the theme right now for Carolina. What was your take on the perception of this Gamecock program last week as you relate it to what comes now in the regular season?
Yeah, I think you just hit it, flying under the radar. You didn't hear much talk about the Gamecocks, really across all formats, as I did radio and TV, and just not a lot of people talking about it. And I think when you have a losing season, when you lose a player like a Spencer Rattler, who was really good, I don't think Spencer got near the credit he deserved last year by the way he played for South Carolina. There are going to be a lot of questions. A lot of people sort of discount them. I thought they would be about where they were, 12, 13. And you know what? I think that's good for Shane. I think it's good for the team that people have sort of written them off. I think they'll play better. I think they'll be a lot more motivated, a lot more focused to go in and prove people wrong, much like they did his first 2 years. I mean, he wins 7 games his first year. They play 4 quarterbacks. One of those is a GA coach. The other guy is a Division II player. Their second year, they get better. They beat Tennessee. They beat Clemson in the season. And I think last year what was a bit of a bummer. It was a downer for everybody, Shane included. So here's a chance to sort of get back and be that team that goes to the postseason. I never want to sort of single out 1 or 2 games that I think will make or break a season. But you look at those first 4 games for the Gamecocks, they got to figure out a way to be 3-1 in those first 4 games. And one of those games is at Kentucky, the second one. Then they come back home and play LSU at home. 2 of those are non-conference games they certainly should win. So being 3-1 to me is an absolute must for South Carolina as they go through the rest of the schedule. They didn't get an easy draw either. I don't think they've got the hardest schedule, but they certainly didn't get an easier one. And, how Lenore Sellers plays and how he develops from that first game on. And Shane told me that he feels much better about his depth and being able to roll in guys there in the defensive line right there in the interior than he did last year. But so, stopping the run is going to be critical. And I think, do they get a healthy Rocket Sanders? If they do, and they can open some holes for him, he's another one that people have forgotten about because he was hurt. But 2 years ago, catching the football, earning tough yards, being able to break plays and those chunk yardage run plays, he was as good as anybody in the league. So if they get a healthy version of him, that makes a big difference for the Gamecocks.
That's Chris Lowe from ESPN joining Elijah and me a little bit earlier. We will take a break here. We got Drive Around the SEC, but there's one more bit that Chris had to say about the Gamecocks and some of the teams that are kind of in that tier of SEC schools with them. We'll do that for you. Interesting story developing out of Florida with the old Jaden Rashada case. That'll be part of the Drive Around the SEC on the other side. You're listening to the Postgame Show.
Let's tell you about my friends over at Columbia Secret for Weight Loss. Look, we're all different. Everybody's got different weight loss goals, some more than others. I didn't have a colossal weight loss goal, but I wanted to reach a certain weight where I felt like I was going to be a lot more comfortable with my body. And Columbia Secret for Weight Loss did a fantastic job helping me get to that point. Paul Grant and Shaylin helped me not only reach my goal weight, but I exceeded it by 5 pounds and counting. And most importantly, I'm able to keep it off and remain at a weight that makes me happy. And we did all of this with great coaching, with no shots, no pills, just great coaching, great example setting, being able to talk through what helps me with my specific situation and my lifestyle. They can do the same thing for you. And if you'd like to learn the secret of losing up to 1 pound of unhealthy fat per day and start your own success story like myself, give my friends a call, 803-824-4210, 803-824-4210. Results may vary. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. And we're going to start here in Columbia. Trenholm Road at Two Notch Road. An accident's been recently reported to cause some mild traffic backup. We also have another one on Percival Road at Highway 12 and Spears Creek Church Road. One on Kilburn Road near Rosewood Drive. Another one on I-20 westbound, or I-20 eastbound at I-26 near exit 64. One on 20 westbound after the Monticello Road exit 68. We also have one on 26 east at St. Andrews Road near exit 106. And lastly, one on South Carolina 277 northbound at Fontaine Road.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. We will conclude our Chris Lowe interview in just a few. There is some breaking news out of Gainesville right now. Earlier today, a former Florida staffer had filed to have a motion dismissed. The whole Jaden Rashada thing. Let me just kind of back up here so I can get this all right. You remember Jaden Rashada was a highly recruited kid. He's now at Georgia, right?
By way of Arizona State.
Yeah, by way of Arizona State. But Jaden Rashada, was promised, a whole bunch of money for NIL by somebody at UF. Marcus Castro Walker was the Florida football program's he's the former director of player engagement. And today he asked a court in Pensacola to dismiss the complaint against him filed by Jaden Rashada. His attorney argued that Marcus couldn't be held personally liable or named as a party defendant under sovereign immunity rules. I'm not a lawyer, but I'll believe him, saying that Castro Walker was acting as an agent of the state or any of its subdivision. So that's one. But here's the bigger news today. Just a little while ago, in fact, this story was filed in the last hour because Billy Napier has also been named in this suit. And now Billy Napier today has asked for this suit to be dismissed. Pete Nakos of On3, and I'm going to read verbatim here, writes, in a 29-page motion filed in the same court, the third-year head coach argues nothing in the complaint from Rashada supports the notion that Napier participated in any wrongdoing. Napier's motion also stated the complaint did not provide evidence that the coach knew about the contract between Rashada, his NIL agents, and the NIL collective. A quote from the motion, quote, the timing of the events alleged in the complaint shows that Napier could not have fraudulently induced Jaden to abandon his $9.5 million Miami deal. Rashada had already abandoned that deal by November 10th, 2022, more than a month before Napier's alleged involvement. For that reason, among others, the complaint fails to state a claim against Napier, end quote. And again, that's a piece from Pete Nakos of On3. I mentioned earlier from a wire service report out of Florida as well. I'm not surprised. Now, look, filing this motion to dismiss doesn't mean that a judge will agree with them, and how long this will take, I do not know, Elijah Campbell. But I'm not surprised, and this comes back to what we've talked about in a lot of things with NIL and these school, the rules that the NCAA put in place where the schools could not have direct control, and yet the school is going to take the blame. And this has been and remains the most glaring example of this. There may be others that don't rise to this level because, again, he was going to get $9.5 million from Miami, and then it was like 12 or 13 million. I think it was 12 something from Miami, and it ended up like, hey, I can give you a Walmart gift card.
Oh, did we say 12 million?
Yeah, we meant 12
dollars.
Yeah. And then Jaden went to Arizona State where his dad played, and then that didn't work out, and now he's at Georgia, and we'll see how that works out. It seems like problems follow this young man. That may or may not be coincidence. But again, the school didn't have any control. Now, I'm not naive, and you're not naive. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, there's no way that, but you better give your head coach in a case like this some level of plausible deniability. Hey, Billy, we're working on it. That's about as far as you need to go. For real. He needs to know that you're working on it. And this could be anybody now, but you better otherwise leave him in the dark. I think back,
leave him non-privy to the damning details.
Well, I think back to Independence Day, which I love. I love that movie. Yeah, and when Bill Pullman, who's the president's down there in that room full of aliens. Sorry if y'all hadn't seen the movie. That's not really a spoiler. And
it's kind of the premise of the whole movie.
He's telling, and he's talking to his chief of staff. Like, why didn't I know about this? Plausible deniability, Mr. President. Yeah, you don't need to know everything. You want to know as much as possible. But again, the point I make, and to be serious, this is what's problematic about schools being told by the NCAA via, I guess, a vote of members. Yeah. We can't have control of that. 'Cause, that's going to be problematic. Worse than this?
They want that layer of plausible deniability.
So, here we are. I don't know how this goes. I'm gonna side with the school employees. If I don't have now again, if you can prove it, and that's kind of what this says, is like the complaint gives no evidence. Can I go out on a limb here? I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm not a lawyer. I know you're not a lawyer, but I think you have a family member that is.
I do. I send them all the questions.
Don't you have to have evidence in court to prove your case?
One would believe so.
Okay. I was making sure. I suppose sometimes people fudge the evidence.
Yeah, based off my interactions with my relatives.
And that's why we have appeals, right? Like, if somebody fudged the evidence the first time, I can go through an appeals process and everything. Look, I'm being flippant to make a point here. Some bozo in Gainesville ran his mouth. And Billy Napier and Scott Strickland and others had no idea that said bozo was running his mouth to this degree. Mm-hmm. But UF is on the hook for this dude being a bozo. And that's dumb. So, sorry, Jaden Rashada, that you got hosed. Because it sounds like Jaden got hosed, too, by the same bozo.
Yep.
But that's what you get. As my mama would have said, when you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas.
Yeah, that's true.
So
maybe some proper vetting would have been nice for this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, I think we all know those in our lives, whose mouths write checks that their asses can't cash.
I mean, who's representing you? It says, some of his representatives. Well, who you getting, man? And I would joke and say, like, Saul Goodman, but, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Saul Goodman would actually get you a deal.
He would. Don't ask him how he did it. Again, plausible deniability. Right. He'd be the first one to tell you that.
Right. But Saul's your boy. Jimmy's your boy.
Slippin' Jimmy.
So.
Better Call Saul.
And if you haven't seen Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, please do.
It's so good. They're both good.
It's worth your time. And then some. So, good luck, Billy Napier, and good luck to the other guy. Again,
unfortunate for him. Good thing Billy doesn't have much to worry about this football season because his job's totally secure and the schedule is a walk.
Yeah. UF is paying for Billy's legal fees. So that's nice. He's got that going for him. The other guy, Marcus Castro Walker.
The least they could do.
This guy's attorney, by the way, Marcus Castro Walker's attorney, says that Rashada's lawsuit accused Rashada's lawsuit of, quote, attributing meanings to statements and actions that are the exact opposite of what they appear to be on their face. Even a thorough rereading of the complaint after knowing how the story ends would fail to uncover even a single breadcrumb of evidence that even remotely supported the ending. So again, you got two people looking for the same decision from a judge saying, there's no evidence here that we knew what was going on and that we are the ones that duped the kid. And I forget I'm not even going to go look up what the name of the booster was that, tried to start this thing. But again, the guy, we'll get you $12 million. How?
Don't ask me how, but I kind of need to. I'd like to know if I'm getting that money.
Where's my money, Jimmy? Where's my money?
Brutal.
All right. So
what a mess.
Yeah, it's bad.
This should be like the ultimate cautionary tale of why.
Oh, I hope it is. That's why I say it was and remains the number one reason why you gotta have the schools take this over directly. I know there's a lot of good collectives out there doing good work, but don't get your school in trouble over stupid stuff. This is why we're doing this now, for real. So that I don't have to tell a kid, hey, go to the third park bench from the left. Look for a trash can. Behind it, you'll see a bag of peanuts. Take 20 steps from that bag of peanuts to the next trash can on your right. You'll see an empty McDonald's bag. It'll have a phone number on it. Don't call that phone number. Text the word money
Text the word McDouble.
And somebody will tell you where to pick up your bag of cash.
If you found a Dairy Queen bag, don't touch it. That's for somebody else.
Yeah, that's another kid's money. Like, we don't need to do that anymore. So why are we doing it?
That's a fun era, though.
Be a good game.
Got to take the fun out of everything, don't we? We're a litigious society.
That's the drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy, your hometown Chevy dealer. Save $20,000 on new Silverados. Together, let's drive. We'll finish up our Chris Lowe interview with more of his thoughts on the Gamecocks when the postgame show continues. All right, welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. Let's jump right back in. I believe this was the question that you, sir, Elijah Campbell,
Indeed,
asked about kind of comparing schools with first-year quarterbacks, right?
With
And
very small sample size.
yeah, with very small to almost no sample size. And this is how Chris Lowe responded to that, which includes some more thoughts overall on the Gamecocks.
Because that's a good question. I think probably just
Hang on one second. We'll get it back.
from a pure arm talent standpoint, Io Maliave at Tennessee is probably the most talented. But, we other than the Iowa game and the bowl game last year, we haven't seen him play. Jackson Arnold played in the bowl game last year, made some mistakes for Oklahoma, but put up big numbers. I know, again, in talking to Shane and people around that program, they're really excited about what Sellers could do. I talked to a couple of the kids in Dallas, a couple of the players, and, his ability to run the football and extend plays and his arm strength. I think, was the other one LSU Nussmeier? Is that who you mentioned?
Oh, did not. We can throw LSU in there too.
Yeah. Kentucky. I think you said
Kentucky has a transfer, Vandegrift from Georgia, another guy who's going to be a first-year starter. So, listen, it's a quarterback's game now more than ever, and you got to have that guy that, especially at a school that doesn't have the kind of personnel that can line up and just knock you off football. Georgia, Alabama, Texas. You got to be able to find ways to move the ball, hit some explosive plays downfield, do some different types of things. And I think that's going to be critical for all those guys that we just mentioned. And how do they play around them? You look at Tennessee. Tennessee has lost some really good receivers the last few years. They feel like they have good depth at receiver, but I don't know that you point to any one guy on their roster and say he's Jalen Hyatt, or he's a breakout. He's one of the kids LSU had last year. So much of it is we talk about quarterbacks. It is a quarterback game, but how do you protect them? Can you take some pressure off that quarterback's shoulders by running the football some, especially in the red zone? And I think the third thing is, you've got to, you got to play well around them. Guys have got to make plays and catch a ball, out in space, break a tackle, turn a 7-8 yard gain into a 25-yard gain. And I think, Carolina's certainly got to be able to do more of that. I've known Shane Beamer a long time, 2 decades or more. And I never doubted that he was ready for the job. When he got it, a lot of people said, well, he's never been a coordinator, he's not done this, not done that. I think what he did his first 2 years was underrated, and the coaching job he did. Now, last year was what it was. I think this year it will be very telling if they can get back to being a winning football team, a team that's in the postseason, with the way he's been able to. I know they have it. You're not going to just out-recruit Georgia, okay? You're not going to do that. You're not going to out-recruit Alabama and LSU. But bring in guys who are really good football players and develop them. And I think they got a couple guys up front on defense, Sanders and Hemingway. Those guys could play for a lot of schools. You got to be able to get more of those and bring in guys that maybe weren't as highly rated and get them to that point. And I like Shane's staff. He hasn't been afraid to make changes the last couple of years, and certainly he's done that this year. But this is a big year for him, and he knows that. There's no question he doesn't walk into this season with his eyes closed, but I think he also feels good about the culture, the bond on this football team, and some of the young guys like the Sellers who haven't had really chances to play, but they know what they've seen behind closed doors and what they feel like they can do this season.
Good stuff from our buddy Chris Lowe. The full interview already up on the podcast page, 1075thegame.com, or the app, which you can get at the App Store or the Google Play Store. We encourage you to do so for all kinds of great content that we have out there for you. Listen, he's right. Internally, they feel good. And I know here locally we can say some of the things that others just aren't going to get around to when it comes to Carolina football. And I do not at all agree with any notion of Shane Beamer being on any kind of hot seat. Again, every seat in the SEC is always warm because that's the nature of the beast. But quite honestly, as someone who has been around here quite literally my entire life, one of the biggest problems that South Carolina has when it comes to its football program is the constant head coaching turnover. I've said many times, Elijah, and I'm quite serious about this. If South Carolina could be thought of like Iowa, it would be a tremendous accomplishment. And you know what Iowa has? They've had 2 coaches since Ronald Reagan was president. That matters. There's a way to go do it.
Stability sounds nice.
And
yeah.
Carolina has had a board for years that just gets real frustrated real quick, and you get that one, you beat a Clemson, you beat a Georgia, you beat a Bama, you beat an LSU back in the 90s. Oh, well, we're as good as anybody else. It's not how it works. You've got to do it over time. And when you finally had someone like Steve Spurrier stay here, 12 years, 10, whatever it was, 11 years, and give you that 5-year stretch of winning 49 football games, you begin to understand what sustaining it looks like and how it's done. Now, look, Will ran it into the ground, but Shane needs time. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but if you keep starting over, you know what you're going to do? You're going to keep starting over. So allow this thing to breathe a little bit. Good stuff today. Appreciate all of y'all's input. For Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.